Welcome to Pivotal People. Today we're going to be speaking to Amrit Dhaliwal. Thank you for joining us at Pivotal People. It's really good to see you.
Lovely to be here, thank you.
Would you like to first of all just tell me a little bit about what you're doing right now?
So I'm the CEO and founder of Walfinch, and Walfinch is a home care provider, but and I started off as a franchisee and became a franchisor. And through Walfinch, I've been able to build the franchising network of home care providers to a national standard. And so we're sort of up and down the country. I think furthest north is Edinburgh, and furthest south is probably Southampton.
Fantastic. Yeah, my background is care homes. However, within Fulcrum, we have a lot of expertise within domiciliary care too. So we do a lot of work with your sort of providers. Do you mind taking me right back to the beginning? What we're trying to do is, you know, you're a very successful businessman. You've created a very successful brand. Tell me about your childhood and how you grew up where you grew up and what how you got to where you are now.
It's a big question, Tina. So I actually grew up in Southall, West London, and a huge sort of immigrant community. My parents flew over from India in the 70s, and so I'm first generation immigrant Punjabi, grew up around those areas. And I saw a lot of entrepreneurs growing up, because what you'll find with a lot of the immigrant community is that in order to socially be mobile, they needed to get involved in entrepreneurial activities, whether that was properties or retail shops and what have you. So it was always very kind of common for me, and that hunger and drive to build a business was always sort of around me. I went to school as you do and all of the usual stuff, and it was very interesting because I always imagined that I would be a professional, work in the city or within the medical field or something like that. And part of that was really just a indoctrination from my mother, I suppose, as you do with the community. But in my heart of hearts, I always wanted to be a business owner, because that's really what I saw as being a grown-up. And I thought, well, gosh, this is what everyone does. And also I quite liked the ability to wake up when I wanted to and go to the gym in the middle of the day or whatever it might be. And so I always sort of felt that whatever I ended up doing, I would want to create a business out of that. And for a long time there, I wanted to get and become a dentist, which is quite funny because I'm married to one now. So, but I thought, well, oh gosh, okay. So there's an entrepreneurial side to that, and that's the thing that attracted me. And then in the end, just before I was choosing my A levels, I changed the courses, and I thought, well, I don't want to do that. I certainly want to go in and be more commercial, and picked sort of economics and history, which I actually read at university, and came out of university and started working. For about 8 months I worked as a headhunter in the IT space. Yeah. And I realised I was totally unemployable. And I thought, gosh, I can't do this. I can't fathom another 20, 30, 50 years of turning up and doing this. And I just thought, I've got more to give. But I wasn't sure what that was, because clearly I was 21 years old.
Who knows what they want to do at 21? Yes, exactly, yeah.
And I thought, well, okay, I don't really have any experience, but I feel pretty comfortable around people. Maybe I'll go and start a bar or something. But I found this going concern. It was an Italian deli in Richmond, and bought it. Yeah. Had no idea what the hell I was doing. And then I turned up one day, it was like September, and I thought, gosh, I'm not really sure how to make a coffee with that particular coffee machine, or what the wine's about, and so on. And then my true entrepreneurial journey began, because then you start figuring it out, hiring the right people, building that. I built that sort of a restaurant business up to a few restaurants in Richmond. And then got involved in domiciliary care, which obviously is a natural step from restaurants.
Do you still have the restaurant business too?
No, I sold that quite a few years ago. I actually, for a while, I was living in Buckinghamshire, driving an hour to Oxfordshire, which is where my dom care business was, and I bought a franchise on the advice of my wife, my then girlfriend, and then I would drive 3 hours from Abingdon in Oxfordshire to Richmond and work there until midnight, 1 o'clock, and then drive back home to Bucks. And I did that for 18 months before the dom care business sort of took off, and I was able to sell the restaurants and get fully involved in dom care. But it was then, and that was probably about 2012, 2013, and it was then that I realised that the market's really broken, in my opinion. And I thought there was lots of issues within the home care sector, and it was pretty archaic. And also I felt there was a lot of issues within the franchising sector, and that felt pretty archaic. And I thought, well, somebody like me should be able to just walk in, and it should be plug and play, and as close to a business in a box as possible. And it was then that I thought, in 2013, that I need to learn everything I can learn, build this business up, sell that, and start franchising myself, which was quite a scary journey, and
yes, absolutely,
and go back to zero, which I did, and I then started Walfinch 2019, I think it was, and just been able to build through franchising and corporate locations as well.
Yeah, I mean that's a really interesting journey, and interesting. You say it was quite a big leap from restaurateur to home care, but it's actually not. It's people service, isn't it?
It truly is.
And I think, a lot of people come into care through other services. And if we like people, we tend to lean towards working with people.
And I think actually some of the best care providers are people that have no experience in care, because they look at it and just flip it on its head and say, well, actually, this isn't the way it's always been done. This is the way it ought to be done. And I think that's really the important thing. When I'm going through to award a franchise, I'm always looking at that and thinking, would I want these people providing care for my parents? And do they get it? Or are they just going to be churning out the same thing that everyone's been doing for the last 20 years? I'm interested in moving the market on and saying that, well, actually, when I need care, I'd like something that is fit for purpose, not just something that, this is a square hole and we're going to just ram this round peg into it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's the same with the care home industry too. I think over the last certainly 20, 30 years that I've been involved in care homes, we are looking after people at a higher and higher level. So where we used to look after people, that you're now looking after people at home. Yeah. In care homes, they're now looking after people that used to be in nursing homes or even in hospital. I think there is a massive need for domiciliary services. Yeah. Because most people want to live at home. Yeah. If you can stay at home, there's not many reasons you can't stay at home unless somebody has dementia or mental health issues that need specialist care. You can usually provide a care service at home. I mean, you provide quite a specialist care service at home, don't you, with your...
Yeah, I mean, my view, if you look at the market right now, we've probably got about 10% of the market is home health care. Yeah. And it's a huge market. Mm-hmm. And I think if we fast forward 10 years, then I think that home health will really develop. Yeah. If we look elsewhere in the world, States, even parts of Europe, there's a lot of home health care happening. So that ICU unit at home. Now, I've done quite a bit of that, even as a care provider myself, where you're doing sort of trachea, peg, suction, all that kind of stuff at home. And I think actually the care provider of tomorrow, the domiciliary care provider of tomorrow, will be building that in. So when we're looking at technology within our business, we're really thinking about, well, is the analytics there? Does it allow us to build into this? And can we be constantly piloting with different wearables, with different levels of service that we can provide? Because I actually think that there's probably not much you can't do at home now, as long as you've got the facilities, the equipment, and the right level of training. So my first care business, I actually had a nurse manager, which sort of accidentally put me into this really interesting space that I didn't know I was in. And we did very complex work. For the families, often it's a much nicer situation to be at home and to be able to see mum and dad at home in that space. Yeah, there's a lot more choice as well of care provision nowadays. You've got supported living and sort of in between
you call bell systems and
Yeah.
stuff that you can get in to look after yourself at home. And I think, going forward, when you need care, I'm a lot older than you, but when you need care...
Only a couple of years, I'm sure.
Yeah, but when you need care, it's going to be a very different market. You're right. And you've talked a little bit about where you see the domiciliary care going in the future. What I see as well, and I'm sure you do, is the digital transformation of the whole sector. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of that is down to CQC and CQC's need for remote monitoring and future remote monitoring. I think that is something that will save time.
Yeah.
It'll make recording much more efficient.
We're actually a completely paperless organisation.
Fantastic.
And I was thinking about this in 2012, and I thought, well, gosh, this is really archaic to have filing cabinets full of invoices or care plans, and okay, well, that one folder's missing, or that one piece of paper is in the wrong person's file, and all of that sort of normal human stuff.
Yeah.
It felt really sort of wrong to me, and I felt like, well, actually, if we look around the world, we're probably a decade behind in terms of use of technology. And so when I was building Walfinch, I was really thinking about how to automate the whole service and think, well, okay, we've got digital care planning, but I feel that that's just hygiene now. If you're not digital with care planning, what are we up to? Having all your medication there, your noting service, being able to allow the family to be involved in that and be able to sort of have an app and get into
really
it.
Important, that, yeah.
To think about the automation throughout the whole process. How do you make sure that every month, 2 weeks, 3 months, or whatever it is, you're able to have those touch points with family members, surveys with care workers and so on? I mean, surely we ought to be able to build this within technology. And, one of the big things that we're looking at is really saying, well, currently, I think there are some really great pieces of kit out there, but they're all for different things.
Yep.
And it's really difficult to put that under one umbrella. So we're really investing heavily in the kind of connections between those, and the APIs are plugging your bookkeeping software into your thing that collects information from your website, and then the rostering software and so on. So you're not then duplicating data and so on, and then being able to look at the data and slice and dice it however you want to. There's a business case for it.
Absolutely.
But also, actually, it just makes a load of sense for providing better quality service. Yeah. So I really think that actually, if providers are not thinking about this right now, this is really the space that we need to be thinking about really heavily. So we work with Birdie at the moment, and they have some quite nice bits that they're developing where you can send a link to another health provider and they can dig in and so on. I'm actually releasing a book this year called The Home Care Revolution, and a lot of that is around looking at all of these different things and saying, well, actually, let's just think about the market rather than putting additional plasters on. Yeah. Let's really just change it. And I'll give you a sort of an analogy in a whole different space. So through the lockdown, we were developing our house. It was a back-to-brick build. And, the architect took the sizes of the rooms and so on. And then we went upstairs and the builders started chipping away. And I thought, okay, great. I went there a couple of days later and I thought, well, hold on a second, guys. You've got a whole extra cupboard space over here. Where's that come from? That's not on the plans. And they said, well, over the years, people have just replastered this. So you've got a foot of additional plastering that's happened over the last 100 years, or whatever it might be. But we've just gone right back to the brick and fixed it. And so we're rethinking the whole space. And I feel like that's exactly what needs to happen in the care market.
You just told me you've written a book.
Yes. So for me, it was really about who it spoke to. And yes, it speaks to care providers, but also really policymakers. And what I'm hoping will happen out of me releasing this book is that other care providers will join into that and either start testing some of these things or start talking about it in a more kind of structured way. I've launched Walking with Walfinch, so it's a walk and talk, and which has been great to support entrepreneurs within the sector and beyond. Actually, the first one with my parents and talked about their entrepreneurial journey.
Fantastic.
And so
Thank you for joining us. It's been really interesting talking to you.